Hello, everybody. This is Cyrus again with Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. And by the way, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, please help me keep this channel going. I would really appreciate it. All right, so I want to talk a little bit tonight about the word woo and why people have a aversion to para topics and even, sadly, subjects like life after death, for which there is an abundance of evidence, and yet people still hate the subject. I kind of thought about making this little video because there's like a political commentator that I like, and very popular guy, but he's part of like the millennial intelligentsia that has very specific, strong feelings about certain subjects, and generally speaking, the millennial intelligentsia has almost no patience for quote woo topics. And I do notice this with a lot of younger people in my age category, because even when I was like a young teen or 12 or 13 years old, I remember people in their mid 20s. Back then it was like the Generation X, same attitudes. So as I talk about in other videos, when people get older and they begin having close loved ones die, they're more likely to rethink this philosophy. So there is an age-related reason. But anyway, so this guy was basically talking about how he strongly disagrees with anybody, silly enough to believe in a spiritual afterlife. And it's always a sad thing when I see people outside of this genre, which is my primary interest and my primary writing career, when suddenly they cross paths with this interest, and then I see what negative or misguided opinions there are about it. I also was watching some travel show, and the host is again kind of part of the millennial intelligentsia. You can kind of tell, again, it kind of looks like a hipster. And most hipster-looking guys, they all belong to this group think where there's certain things you can and cannot accept. Afterlife-related topics is on that taboo list. So somebody was doing some kind of a spirit communication demonstration, and then they cut to this guy going like, "Oh no," and they have a laugh about it, and they basically say this is BS. And then they keep going on their way. This was a travel show I was watching. So I see this kind of stuff all the time, and it does make me sad, but I also realize one reason that people hate this stuff so much. And the explanation is that anybody at any time can channel their imaginations and claim to be in touch with the other side, sometimes for power, money, profit. So anybody can suddenly say, "Oh, I'm getting a message from beyond, and it's telling me all these answers that will probably make me money and make you want to give me money and make myself seem more powerful than you," right? So anybody can just start channeling nonsense and using that to exploit, to harm people, whatever it might be. And I think most logical-minded people see this, and it really, really bugs them. There was a South Park episode about John Edward, the TV psychic, and they had like this thing where there was like this galactic competition of the most horrible creature in the universe, and so there was all these like extraterrestrials walking around, and then they finally say, "Well, we think the most horrible creature in the universe is John Edward because he preys on grieving people by pretending to be a psychic." So that gives you an idea of like how much these subjects can be just loathed by people. And to date, I can't tell if John Edward is a real psychic or not, but I can totally see how somebody would get that impression, given the fact that he is working with grieving people, and potentially grieving people could be paying him vast amounts of money. And so I have less sympathy when a psychic is making like these massive TV psychic salaries, because in addition to that, they often take private readings. So like you're making $1 million from the TV company, but then on the side they're billing people $20,000 to do a private reading, and it's like, People are grieving, and so they might be willing to spend their life savings on a psychic. So I would say, psychics who charge that much privately, um, they're probably one of the reasons why so many people hate the subject. Because even as coming from somebody who believes in psychics, who knows about an afterlife and has had many experiences and has had life-changing psychic readings, when I see somebody exploiting that ability, it really makes me cringe. And I do think psychics should be able to make a good living, but the amount you're going to bill somebody, like if you can put yourself up as the greatest psychic on earth, and from that position of power, you begin charging people $20,000 a reading, $10,000 a reading, whatever it might be. Realistically, maybe like $500 an hour or something like that. Then, I know it's the free market and the market decides what people want, but you're putting yourself in a position where people who have lost loved ones are so desperate they think, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and bust into my 401k and I'm going to pay this guy $20,000 because he is the best. Or she is the best. So it's a real temptation for a grieving person to do that, which then makes that psychic into an exploiter of the grieving. And no matter how you slice that, that's unethical behavior. Should they charge? Sure, a couple $100 maybe. But celebrity psychics, they don't charge a couple $100 for a great reading. It's astronomical. And I don't want to name names, but some of those big shots I've looked into, and it's kind of secret what they bill, but from what I hear, it's a lot. And I'm talking about the top brass. So most people know what's going on with this, and they just consider these to be the worst people in the world. I don't take it that far, but what we're looking at, though, is ultimately, since time immemorial, people have been able to say they're psychics, say they're mediums, and exploit that ability, even if it's a real ability, and profit off of it, sometimes to other people's detriment. And in the information age, it's even more apparent. And so that's why a lot of people, they basically write the entire subject off because they hate those people so much. Again, the South Park episode about John Edward. A lot of people watch South Park. It's pop culture media, that's extremely influential, especially on young people. So everything is written off because you have these people exploiting the grieving. All psychics are awful. And people turn it into a quest. And that's why legitimate supernatural researchers have been horribly harassed by skeptics. People like Gary Schwartz. One time he was harassed by Penn and Teller. We have situations where basically people, what was I going to say, so we have legitimate researchers being horrifically harassed by skeptics, right? Then we have organizations, clans, groups, websites like the Rational Wiki guys or the Guerrilla Skeptics going out just hell-bent to discredit every single psychic, every single author like me, anybody involved, because they think that the whole system is despicable, it's all made up, and it's all about exploitation of the grieving. We know this is not the case, it's not a rational position, but these are not rational people. And so anybody involved in this has to be aware that the kind of hardcore materialist atheist subculture, they despise these topics, and they will usually always despise it until they have their own experiences, sometimes out-of-body experiences or after-death contact, that makes them rethink all of it. And then once they're open-minded enough to do some Googling and then begin looking at the real, solid, objective, and scientific evidence of non-material consciousness and life after death, then they may end up like me, or like you watching this video, Their minds often will change because they had that entire time been dismissing something that was real. Sadly, some people don't get to that point, and they die with no idea that there's an afterlife, and they end up, as I talk about in the previous video, the astral world, not even sometimes knowing that they died. And you may meet people in out-of-body states, and I've done it, who are still denying the existence of an afterlife despite having died here. Now they just think that their life here was some kind of weird dream, and still they will someday die and no longer exist. And nobody can tell them otherwise because they have such a unwavering belief in the superstitious nonsense known as materialist atheism, physicalism. That's it. If you like this, maybe buy a couple of my books. I have the Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife and Beyond. You can find them at afterlifetopics.com or on Amazon. And you can find my classes about these subjects at Afterlife University, also at Afterlife Topics. So maybe I'll catch you around. You can shoot me a message on Facebook. You can join the Facebook group. It's a pretty big community. It's good for people trying to understand these topics. That's it, and I will see you on the next video.